Welcome to the InfoSec Insider podcast, brought to you by URM, the UK's leading information and cybersecurity specialists.
Hi, my name's Annie and I'm joined today by Neil Jones, a senior consultant with us at URM. Welcome to another episode of InfoSec Insider. So today we're going to be talking about clause 10.2 of ISO 27001. So to begin, could you, Neil, just give us a quick sort of high-level overview of what clause 10.2 is and why it is important for organisations to manage problems with their ISMS?
Yeah, sure. Good morning, afternoon, everybody. Yes, so clause 10, nonconformity and corrective action requires organisations to have controls in place to handle issues with their ISMS. So in simple terms, when an issue arises or requirements are not met, the organisations must fix the issue, understand why it occurred, prevent it from happening again, and provide evidence that the fix is effective. As well as supporting continual improvement, this clause is important since auditors, including external assessors, often use it to judge the maturity of the ISMS. An organisation may have strong, well-documented controls, but without an equally strong corrective action process, the ISMS may be considered weak and not sufficiently resilient. As a consequence, repeated failures to meet requirements of clause 10.2 often lead to major nonconformities.
And what is a nonconformity?
A nonconformity most commonly occurs when a requirement of the standard is not met, but can also be sourced from the organisation's own ISMS policies or procedures, or from applicable legal, regulatory or contractual obligations. Of course, not all nonconformities have the same severity. Auditors will classify them as minor or major based on the perceived impact and how widespread the issue is. Having nonconformities is normal, and auditors do not expect organisations to be perfect. What really matters, though, is how the organisation responds when a problem is identified.
So you mentioned minor and major nonconformities. What's the difference?
A minor nonconformity usually means there is a discrete or isolated problem, but the ISMS still functions overall. Examples of minor nonconformities can include a policy exists and is approved, but one department is using an outdated version. Staff understand policies, but one person does not know where to find them. Access reviews are conducted quarterly, but evidence for a particular system is missing. Policies exist, but do not reflect real operations. These issues should still be fixed, but they do not indicate a complete system failure. A major nonconformity exists when there is a total absence of a required process or control, a systemic failure in the ISMS, repeated minor nonconformities suggesting loss of control, or a situation that seriously impacts the information security objectives. Examples of major nonconformities include no corrective action process exists at all, an information security risk assessment has not been performed, or management reviews are not being carried out. Major nonconformities can be raised against management system clauses only and can delay ISO 27001 certification, require follow-up audits, and often indicate problems with leadership or governance. Major nonconformities should not be raised against individual Annex A controls since the controls are not mandatory, although clause 6.1.3c does require that the Annex A controls be considered for risk treatment. However, repeated minor observations against related controls may suggest a systemic failure against the clause, indicating that the clause has not been properly implemented and resulting in a major nonconformity being raised against that clause.
So what do organisations need to do to meet the requirements of clause 10.2?
Well, first, the organisation must react to the issue. Any immediate consequences must be addressed through operational mechanisms such as incident management. It is possible for nonconformities not to have immediate operational impacts, being sourced, for example, from activities such as internal and external audits. Such nonconformities can sometimes command less management attention, so organisations should take steps to avoid them falling by the wayside and remaining open for extended periods while operational issues are addressed. Next, evaluate the need for corrective action. Not every issue needs a complex solution. The organisation should consider how likely the issue is to happen again and what the impact would be if it happens again. formulating corrective actions that are reasonable and risk-based. Evidence of the corrective action needs to be recorded, often within a non-conformity register, along with the evidence that evaluation has received suitable management attention, such as review of proposed corrective actions. It is also necessary to identify a root cause for the issue. This is one of the most difficult aspects of clause 10.2. A true root cause is not something superficial such as human error or someone forgot. Rather, it must explain why the ISMS allowed the issue to occur. Examples include no clear ownership, no reminder or tracking process, poor or missing training, outdated or unclear procedures. Note that auditors pay close attention to root cause analysis, so it's important to ensure that root cause analyses are fully documented and subject to management review that can be clearly evidenced. The root cause must either be documented as part of the non-conformity register or referenced from the register itself. Next, it is necessary to implement corrective actions. The corrective actions must address the root cause, be practical and proportionate, and be implemented and tracked. Examples of corrective actions include updating procedures, assigning responsibility to a role, improving training, or adding automation. Of course, any operational changes must be passed through your change management process, and process changes must be reflected in updates to process documentation. Next, review corrective actions for effectiveness. The review of effectiveness includes checking whether the action actually fixed the problem, the issue has reoccurred, the control is now working as intended. Note that this may go beyond the remit of post-change review for operation issues and is often accomplished fully through audits, monitoring, and management reviews. Finally, make any necessary updates to the ISMS. Having got this far, an organisation may feel that they have done all they need. However, they may also need to update the ISMS. If corrective actions change how the ISMS operates, related documentation must be updated. This may include policies, procedures, risk registers, or controls. Documentation should always reflect what really happens in practice. I've really skipped over the surface here, believe it or not. You can find more detail of all these points in the blog ISO 27001 clause 10.2 nonconformity and corrective action.
So clearly there's quite a lot involved with clause 10.2. How do organisations go about implementing it?
Well, in the first instance, identify nonconformities. These can be found through internal audits, external audits, instance, management reviews, or just daily operations. The organisation will need to define processes to manage nonconformities as follows: formally logging the nonconformities in a register that records details such as a description of the issue, when it was identified, the severity, minor or major, and other areas. Performing root cause analysis, considering what failed, why it failed, and what allowed it to fail. Identifying corrective actions that address the issue and the root cause. Monitoring and review of corrective actions with the capability to extend target dates where a corrective action cannot be completed in accordance with initial plans and expectations. Actually implementing the correcting actions and tracking their progress to completion, ensuring evidence is available. Verifying the effectiveness of the actions, confirming that the issue is resolved and does not reoccur. Closing non-conformities once evidence exists that they have been addressed, the effectiveness of the actions have been reviewed, and any relevant documentation updated as needed. Again, there is more detail on this topic in the blog.
Are there any common mistakes that organisations should try to avoid when addressing clause 10.2?
Indeed, there are, and these can include reaching premature conclusions or solutions without performing a structured and clear root cause analysis, failing to properly document the nature of nonconformities, any actions taken, and evidence of effectiveness of those actions, i.e. not verifying whether a corrective action has actually resolved the issue. Permitting long delays between identifying a nonconformity and taking action, thus exposing the organisation to further recurrences. Simply repeating the same corrective actions for recurring issues rather than identifying systemic problems, as this can result in the inefficient use of time and resources by continually addressing the same issue instead of resolving the underlying cause and preventing future recurrence. failing to communicate nonconformities and corrective actions to all relevant stakeholders. But the biggest mistake is treating clause 10.2 as an audit requirement or box ticking exercise only, rather than an opportunity for improvement, thus limiting the organisation's ability to strengthen its ISMS and reduce future risk.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today, Neil. If any of our listeners want to read up on this subject, as Neil mentioned, we have a blog on our website, urmconsulting.com, which covers this topic in a little bit more detail, and that is called ISO 27001 Clause 10.2 Nonconformity and Corrective Action. And the link to that will be in the description. So do go and check that out. And thank you very much for listening today. If you've enjoyed this podcast, we would really appreciate it if you could spare a moment to leave a rating or review at ratethispodcast.com/InfoSec Insider. To listen to more episodes, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Podbean.
Thank you for listening to URM's InfoSec Insider podcast. For more information, visit our website at urmconsulting.com.